So in order to knit your magic loop, you will need your yarn and you will also need a circular needle. Now the one I'm working with is a 40-inch circular. That means that it is long enough to be used for most kinds of magic loop knitting really. The longer the better in some ways, obviously not too long, but less than 32 inches is probably going to be a little bit tricky for some projects, so I recommend buying at least 32 inch up to 40 really. So yeah, you work with that. It needs to have a nice flexible cord like the one that I've got here, simply because you're going to be doing a little bit of sort of bending it, and it needs to be nice and flexible in order to work the magic loop. So I've cast on here 40 stitches. Now what I'm going to do is thread this along the cord, and we are going to split it in half. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 16, 18, 20. Okay, so that's midway. Split it in half, and I'm just pulling that thread through here. So you see I'm pulling the cord, and that's all going through. So what I do now is just line them up on my needles. So I'm going to thread this one through as well. Just neaten that up slightly. So what you can see now is I've got half and half, 20 on one needle, 20 on the other. And now all we need to do, keeping in mind that the cast on needs to be in the middle so it doesn't get twisted, all I need to do now is join it in the round. Now you can use whatever method you prefer. I like just switching the first and the last stitches on the needle, so I'm just going to pull out the last stitch that I've cast on and leave that big long loop hanging. Now all I'm going to do is take the first stitch that I cast on here, pull that off, being careful not to drop it, and then I'm just going to hook it onto the back needle. So I've just switched it around, and then all I do now is take that big long loop, give it a tug, and there we go, nice and switched round. So now you're at a point where you're ready to start knitting the magic loop. You can see here that I've got 20 stitches on this side, 20 stitches on this side, so it's a 40 stitch round. And then all I'm going to do to join it into a magic loop, or start working the magic loop, is pull out this back needle like this, and then loop it round. I've got one loop on this side, one loop on this side, so I'm not pulling it all the way through, and then I'm working into this first stitch. So grab my yarn, pull it nice and tight for that first stitch so you avoid a ladder. You're much more likely to avoid ladders with the magic loop method anyway. So you're working in there, give that a tug to neaten up the stitch, and then literally just knitting across this row. Obviously if you're joining the magic loop and you're doing a 1x1 rib or something, then just knit in the pattern that you will be working in. The same method applies. What's really cool about this is that whilst it seems like it's a relatively advanced or complicated technique, it really is easy enough for the sort of most basic of beginners. You can use it on socks, you can use it on hats, I use it on sleeves quite a lot. It's a really simple, easy way to quicken up knitting in the round, and I find it to be much neater. I know some people love DPNs, but whilst I sometimes will use them, the magic loop is much more effective for me. Okay, so I'm at the end of the row now. So just worked into all those stitches. And you can start to see the round happening around here. So I'm going to turn my work so it looks like this, and then just thread this so that it goes back onto the needle now. There we go. And then all I'm doing is pulling out that back needle now. Oops. It's a really hot day and my yarn is getting stuck on my needle. Does that happen to anyone else? Okay, there we go. So I've got a loop on this side, I'm creating a loop on this side now, and I'm working into these needles. Careful not to twist them. Working into these stitches, sorry. So just going through that first stitch, got my yarn here, making sure to pull it relatively snug so that you avoid getting any kind of ladder at the edges, and working across. Okay, so I'm just going to spread this out so you can see a little bit more of how it looks. And there we go, so we've got the round started here. So I'm going to go away and work on this a little bit more, work a few more rounds for you, and then you can see how it looks once you've knitted a little bit more. I've now got this fabulous loop happening without the need for DPNs. There's no laddering here, you can see where the join is, no laddering. Again here, just get that out of the way. No laddering, it's really nice and neat, super easy too. So as I mentioned earlier, Magic Loop works really well for hand knit socks, for things like hats and stuff, but you can also use it in quite a novel way, as I've done here. So this is my fragment t-shirt. This is going to be a pattern that's released in a few weeks actually. And what I've done is I've created a split hem, and I wanted it to have that sort of folded over edge effect, but I really wanted it to have a neat finish on the edge of the split. So the way that I resolved that that problem I had is obviously if I was to knit that flat and then fold it over, I'd have an open edge here. So instead what I've done is I've cast this on in Judy's Magic Cast On, and then from that cast on here I've worked in the round using Magic Loop to get that really nice edge, and it's just sort of a tube really, which is then joined at the top and then worked flat onwards. So yeah, you can use Magic Loop obviously for your traditional projects, but then things like this, it's really useful too.